We're joined on the line right now by another very special guest, Elise, Congresswoman from the great state of New York and the House GOP Conference Chairwoman. Congresswoman Stefanik, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us again here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Great to be with you as we head into the final stretch of the most important election of our lifetime.
I couldn't agree more. So, okay, the reason why I want to have you on, I saw this report in Semaphore. The headline is Why Republicans Feel Good About Harris's Showing in New York. And in it, you lay out how the in every single congressional district in New York, in the state of New York, right? Like, I mean, again, we're not talking about like red states or even purple states here. We're talking about blue state of New York, which is very tough for Republicans statewide. Every single congressional district, Kamala Harris is underperforming where Joe Biden was in 2020. That's what you say. So walk us through what's going on here with Kamala Harris's underperformance of Joe Biden in 2020 in a state like New York and why it matters in the big picture.
Well, New York is going to matter because, as your listeners will remember, the past midterms, it was New York that we flipped 5 districts to gain the House Republican majority to fire Nancy Pelosi once and for all. And we had a great statewide showing with our statewide candidates Lee Zeldin and Allison Esposito running for governor and lieutenant governor. And Matt, you're right. A lot of people think New York is traditionally a blue state, but Republicans are making significant inroads. And what's been interesting for me is I see all the polling, all the targeted districts every week, and now we're getting it back daily. And Kamala Harris is underperforming where Joe Biden was in 2020 in every single swing district. And Democrats are spending $100 million to try to flip those 5 seats. We will hold the line and make sure that not only do our 5 New York incumbents come back, but we have an opportunity to pick up 2 seats, one in the Hudson Valley, where we have Allison Esposito, a former NYPD officer, running against a rubber stamp for Kamala Harris in Pat Ryan. And then on Long Island, the seat that Tom Suozzi won in the special election, we have an Assemblyman Mike LaPetri, where Trump is actually polling ahead in that district. So I'm very excited, and of course this coincides with President Trump coming to Madison Square Garden later on this month. You will see an outpouring of support and a hero's welcome for Donald Trump in New York.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask about next. Is that Trump going to Madison Square Garden to close out the campaign? I mean, that is like. Let's be honest here for a minute. There's very few people on this planet, if anyone individually, who could sell out the Garden, right? Like, I mean, Donald Trump is going to sell out the Garden, right? Like, I mean, it takes usually a playoff game or something for, the Knicks or something like that to be able to sell out the Garden. It's just incredible. We're going to see Donald Trump close out the campaign at Madison Square Garden. I know this is something that is near and dear to his heart as a native New Yorker. He loves New York City as much as anyone. It's a shame to see what's happened with the Democrat control there and whatnot with the crime and whatnot. But the point is that Donald Trump going to Madison Square Garden is such a huge moment. Talk to us about the significance of this, that he's chosen there to really make the closing case of the campaign.
Well, it is going to be an epic event, and you are exactly right. There are very few people who can fill Madison Square Garden. Donald Trump will fill that, and there's going to be waiting room as well. You saw the welcome he got in Nassau County on Long Island. And again, this is when the media sort of makes fun and attacks him for doing that. He is going to the belly of the failed Democrat beast, and he's going to continue making inroads in New York. He pays attention to these congressional races. When I speak to him, he knows exactly what's happening in the state of New York. And look, he's a New Yorker at heart. Even though he lives in the state of Florida now, like many New Yorkers who have been run out of the state, he loves what made New York great, which is being destroyed by failed Democrat leadership. The other thing that's interesting, Matt, is if you look at our governor in Kathy Hochul in New York, President Trump has higher approval ratings than the Democrat governor in the state of New York. That says a lot about how the Democrat Party in New York and across the country is just crashing and burning because of their failed policies. And another interesting indicator is if you look at blue states like California and New York, traditionally blue states, we've picked up more congressional seats in those states than any other state in the country. And here's why I believe that's the case. Because people feel the double whammy of failed Democrat policies at the national level, coupled with the horrific policies at the state level as well. So you're seeing independents, and even a fair percentage of Democrats vote in support of Republicans. And Donald Trump, Kamala Harris could never sell out Madison Square Garden or even come close. Donald Trump will. He's making inroads with African American voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, and as I said, registered Democrats. So it's going to be a huge moment. I'm excited to be there with President Trump. As I said, he will get a hero's welcome in New York, and I believe that it is possible for Republicans to win New York.
Yeah, and Congresswoman, the next thing I would ask you about here is about specifically about the House majority. The frankly, the Democrats. If you listen to the Democrats, they're like overly confident, and the establishment media they're acting like, oh well, the Democrats are going to take the majority. I don't think that's right. Right? Like if you look across the board, you laid out several of those battleground districts in New York. Obviously, you mentioned the California ones as well. And I think that all of those are likely to, if not all of them, many of them stay Republican. But the Republicans have pickup opportunities in many places as well. You mentioned two in New York. There's another one out in California that I was just seeing polling data and voter registration data. The seat that Katie Porter's leaving. It seems like one that Republicans could pick up in Michigan. Alyssa Slotkin's seat is now the Republican candidate. Tom Barrett's up 4. I saw the latest poll this morning. On that front, there's pickup opportunities in North Carolina. There's pickup opportunities in Texas. New Mexico, Minnesota. I mean, all across the country, Republicans can not just hold the majority, which is a slim majority right now. They can add seats to the majority. I think that's what's going to happen, depending on what happens at the presidential level. But walk us through your view on that.
So your take is my take, and I go back to 2016 and 2020. It is almost the same narrative from the mainstream media. Oh, Republicans are going to lose seats. In both of those elections, we absolutely surged at the ballot box, and we picked up way more seats than anyone thought was possible. After 2016, we had the biggest House majority in modern times. And 2020, we remember those historic false calls on election night saying Pelosi would remain as Speaker, which was the case, but that we picked up seats and almost won the Speaker's gavel. And they had said Republicans will lose seats that cycle when we gain seats. So I think this is going to be another cycle like that. You're right to lay out those key opportunities. You talked about California in the Katie Porter now open seat. Scott Baugh, a great candidate, came close last time. Michigan, you pointed out the Alyssa Slotkin House seat. Tom Barrett is running again. He's in a very strong position to win that seat. Maine, northern Maine, we're polling ahead in that district in the former NASCAR driver and Assemblyman Austin Terrio, who did a great job on the debate stage. Alaska, Nick Begich, Republican candidate there, who has unified the Republican Party, and we are sprinting to Election Day, and we feel good about that seat. So coast to coast, North Carolina, Lori Buckout, who is in a top targeted seat, we think we flip that seat as well. So there's so many opportunities to build this House majority. And again, the media is propping up this narrative like they did in 2016, like they did in 2020, that the House races, that Republicans will lose seats. I think we are in a position to gain seats, and that's what I've been very focused on, making sure we have the resources to get our message out there, because we know the media is not going to do it for us. Our candidates have to get the message out there. And you know what else I've noticed, Matt? I've watched some of these debates in these top targeted, both House and Senate races, and these less than mediocre Democrats, and it just shows me they have been propped up so long, much like Kamala Harris, by the media. The Republican candidates are absolutely dominating the debate stage, talking about the issues that matter, holding Democrats accountable for their failure. So I think this is going to be a very big election night, but it's up to us, we the people. We cannot we cannot take this for granted. We have to turn out every single vote, because we know Democrats are getting desperate. They see Kamala Harris's polling continue to decline. We need to work doubly hard to turn out every vote early, legally by mail, or on Election Day.
Right, and so, and by the way, I think there's some seats in Virginia too that are also very competitive, right? Like the seat that Abigail Spanberger is
Derek
leaving.
Anderson,
Yeah,
Derek Anderson in that seat. Really, that's a toss-up race. Yes.
Yeah. So, Congresswoman, the next thing I want to talk to you about here is that we're starting to see the panic set in on the Democrat side. It feels a lot like 2016, maybe even bigger than that. Where Democrats are panicking. You see the stories everywhere, right? The Hill newspaper, Politico, the New York Times, everybody. They're all writing about, oh, Democrats are freaking out. They're starting to panic. They're all blaming each other. They're pointing fingers. They're like, what did we do wrong? Across the board, whatever the issue is, the fact is that it feels like the Kamala Harris, it's like a deflating tire, right? Like slowly but surely losing air. and losing momentum here as the day comes, as election day comes. Donald Trump's leading in the polls across the board. The early vote numbers, whether they be mail or in person, are just terrible for the Democrats, and they're great for the Republicans across the board. Overgeneralization there, but the point is that Trump's got massive momentum here going into election day. Everybody's starting to feel it, and the panic is setting in. What's your read on the big picture of the presidential race at this point? It really does feel like this is not just Donald Trump's race to lose, but he's got the edge going into election day.
Well, first of all, we're never taking it for granted, and I know that President Trump is going to sprint through the tape on Election Day like he always does. He always outworks his opponents, and our enthusiasm, our energy of our supporters far surpasses that of Democrats. And look, this is what happens, Matt, when you saw the Democrat Party anoint a candidate who was known as the worst vice president in modern history, unable to do that job. They anointed her without a single vote cast. And for 2 months, I would say, the media wrote glowing pieces propping her up, this inevitability. The reality is the more the American people learn about Kamala Harris, the less they support her. She has created these crises with Joe Biden, whether it's the open border crisis, the historic inflation crisis when she cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Expansion Act, or, of course, the horrific foreign policy around the world that has made our national security weak under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch. So this is just people are paying attention. They're honing in. They're learning more about her record, not only as vice president, but the most liberal United States senator. And they realize, compared to 4 years ago, they were much better off with President Trump. So I think this is, again, it was almost inevitable because the fact that they anointed her without a single vote being cast shows you their desperation, but also their entitlement and arrogance, as if the American people would just go along with it. It's offensive and it's absurd. And this is the party in the media that's been attacking Republicans as though we're attacking democracy. No, it's the Democrats who have attacked democracy when they put her in as their general election nominee and found, oh, wait, she doesn't have the same support that not even Joe Biden had.
Right, and the other big thing we've seen this week, Congresswoman, is that Kamala Harris has gone on this like media blitz, right? Like she did 60 Minutes. That was a disaster for her, right? Like even the selectively edited version that they put out, right? Like where they cropped out some of the worse answers. The stuff they actually did publish was terrible for her. But the point is that so and I hope that 60 Minutes actually releases their full transcript. I hope I have confidence that one day they will. But the point is that even there's selective editing over there at 60 Minutes still wasn't able enough to save her. It was still a disaster. Then you saw the Howard Stern one. The Howard Stern was just a total slobberfest, right? All he was doing was drooling over how great he thought Kamala Harris was. There was no substance to that one. Then there was The View. She was asked what she would do differently than Joe Biden. If anything, she couldn't come. Not a thing comes to mind, right? That's what she said. Not a thing comes to mind. The fact is that she keeps doing worse and worse the more that she goes out in public. It's pretty amazing to me watching this whole collapse of the Kamala Harris thing. It just proves the whole thing was fake from the get-go.
It was fake from the get-go, and not only is it exposing Kamala Harris, but it's really exposing the rot in our mainstream media. They have become sycophants and stenographers for the left, and they've lost tremendous, tremendous credibility. And let's be honest, Matt, these are not tough interviews. These are softball interviews that if you're running for Congress or, frankly, you're running for local office, you get tougher questions than Kamala Harris did for the past couple of months. And now when she's asked softball questions, she implodes, whether it's The View, whether it's 60 Minutes. You said you have faith they'll release the transcripts. I think it's because President Trump will force them to, which I fully support President Trump. But that's one of the things I love about President Trump and this movement is he is exposing this deep rot in the deep state, working with mainstream media to try to pull one over the American people. But you know what? The American people are smart. They see through this. They see through the answer that Kamala Harris just gave on The View this week, saying there was nothing she would do differently. That is abysmal and unacceptable. Not only does she own Joe Biden's crises, she created the crises in her positions as open borders are, casting deciding votes in the Senate, etc. So again, this is something where the more people learn about Kamala Harris as a candidate, the less support she has. So I hope she continues to do these horrific interviews. It also shows why they were hiding her, why her campaign was so desperate to hide her for months, because she's unable to get through the basic softball questions.
Really incredible stuff. Chairwoman Elise Stefanik, House GOP Conference Chair. I really want to thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday. Where can people go to learn more about you, get involved if they so choose?
Follow me at Elise Stefanik.
All right. Elise Stefanik, really want to thank you for joining us. We'll get you back again real soon.